I'm going to give you a completely original YouTube-style script inspired by the topic, but I won't reproduce the source wording or structure. Think of this as a creator thinking out loud, reacting, analyzing, and offering fresh takes while grounding things in public context. Hey everyone! Today we're diving into a surprisingly sticky slice of 80s rock lore and Hollywood gossip, the Christina Applegate, Brad Pitt, and Sebastian Bach love triangle that basically sounds like a plot twist from a backstage pass. But I'm not here to recite old headlines. I want to unpack what this moment really tells us about fame, youth, and the way legends are built around flirtations, misread signals, and the chaos of rock and movie stardom. First, let's set the scene, not as a timeline, but as a cultural moment. The late 80s were a crucible where TV iconography, MTV fame, and rock swagger collided. Christina Applegate, then a rising star of television who would soon be a household name, found herself navigating both the admiration of fans and the temptations that come with being young, highlighted, and constantly watched. On the other side, Brad Pitt was on the ascent, already getting attention, but not yet the mythic superstar that future interviews would frame him as. And then there's Sebastian Bach, the face of Skid Row, long hair, arena-ready charisma, an embodiment of a certain rock romance fantasy, reckless, unapologetic, and supercharged with the energy of a live show. What makes this moment interesting isn't just the people involved, it's what people think a love triangle in that world looks like. The memoir angle adds a layer of narrative ownership. Applegate frames a memory with the clarity of adulthood. Bach comes in with the adult lens of accountability. The dynamic isn't simply about who dated whom. It's about how youth, fame, and a rapid-fire social scene can create stories that outlive the actual events. Now, let me pull apart a few core ideas and add some interpretation you won't hear if you only skim the headlines. Idea 1. Fame accelerates impulses and memory reshapes outcomes. My take, when you're on tour, in a band, constantly in motion, relationships become logistics of a touring life. The adrenaline rush of attention can blur consequences. Personally, I think the reaction of apology, "I'm sorry if I hurt anybody," is a move that signals both accountability and a defense of the wildness of youth. What this matters for is a bigger pattern. Fame doesn't just amplify feelings, it tempers memory. What people don't realize is how the environment can reframe a moment years later, turning a spontaneous choice into a defining anecdote. If you take a step back and think about it, this is a classic case study in the way the music/film ecosystem creates lasting myths from ephemeral decisions. It's less about who was right or wrong and more about how the narrative is shaped by public fascination with who had power, who surprised whom, and who looked the coolest while doing it. Idea 2. The memoir as a vessel that redefines the past. My take, Applegate's retelling is less a simple confession and more a construction of identity. When you call yourself the child who dumped Brad Pitt, you're signaling how the event fits into a larger coming-of-age arc. That reframing matters because it shifts responsibility and agency into a familiar storytelling frame, the starlet who chose a rock singer over a future movie icon. What's interesting here is the tension between public memory and personal memory. Many people underestimate how memoirs function as a lens for the author's current values and regrets. From my perspective, the deeper implication is that popular culture doesn't just record history, it edits it to fit a narrative that people want to believe about themselves and their careers. This is a reminder that the truth in celebrity stories is often a negotiated thing, not a single fixed moment. Idea 3. The Brad Pitt effect as a stage in myth-building. My take, Pitt's arc, from a rising actor to a globally recognized icon, becomes a reference point for almost any celebrity gossip. When Applegate notes that Pitt wasn't yet the Brad Pitt, she's anchoring him in a pre-myth era. What makes this notable is how the idea of becoming a legend is portrayed as a process that includes missteps, jealousy, and personal growth. In my opinion, this raises a deeper question. Does popular culture use past relationships to measure someone's later success, or does it protect a myth that sometimes obscures the ordinary humanity behind the headlines? The broader trend here is how origin stories around famous people are constantly recycled to keep audiences emotionally invested in the next round of fame's theater. Idea 4. The ripple effects of a single night on relationships and public memory. My take: the anecdote of Pitt driving Applegate's mom home, the gang trouble, and the long-term fallout illustrates how a single evening can cast a long shadow. What this really suggests is that youth-era decisions are not just personal, they're social signals in a culture that loves to analyze who chose whom and when. People misunderstand this as simple scandal, but the deeper point is about how a moment becomes a touchstone for later narratives about loyalty, maturity, and the kinds of choices that define a career. From a broader perspective, it hints at how backstage drama can inadvertently humanize or dehumanize the people involved, depending on how the story is told over time. Idea 5. The interplay of gender, age, and power in retrospective storytelling. My take: Applegate, at 17, writes about feeling powerful in a moment of impulsive defiance. It's a provocative reminder that adolescence inside the celebrity machine isn't a neat, tidy plotline. It's messy, contradictory, and full of vivid emotion. What makes this interesting is how retrospective framing can flip the power balance. The same moment can be read as reckless audacity by some and as a youthful, legitimate assertion of autonomy by others. This connects to a bigger trend. Audiences love a neat moral, but real events in fame tend to be messy, with power, age, and media scrutiny interwoven in complex ways. A detail I find fascinating is how the narrative roles, puppet, rebel, icon, shift depending on who's telling the story and when. Deeper insight: the enduring appeal of these retro anecdotes lies in how they reveal the mechanics of fame itself. What this really suggests is that celebrity isn't just talent and glamour, it's a social system where stories are currency. The fact that we're still talking about a 1989 VMAs night shows how entertainment ecosystems recycle these moments to shape identity, myth, and even brand narratives for years or decades. If you map this onto today, you can see the same patterns in modern memoirs, social media-fueled nostalgia, and the way studios and labels curate legacies. The bigger trend is that audiences crave origin stories that feel authentic, even when those stories are filtered through memory, interviews, and marketing. Closing thought: what we're really listening to is a chorus about youth, risk, and the price of becoming a cultural icon. My takeaway: the most interesting part isn't the romance or the breakup, it's how a single moment becomes a lens for examining the construction of fame itself. As viewers, we're invited to question not just who did what, but how our culture chooses to remember it and why that memory sticks. A question to Jim Balance the takeaway: how would our view of fame change if most celebrity memories were treated as fluid, contested narratives rather than fixed, authoritative facts? If you enjoyed this kind of analysis, drop a comment with your take on why some celebrity moments endure while others fade. Do you think the memoirs are honest reimaginings, or do they rewrite the past to fit an adult author's narrative? And of course, subscribe for more deep dives where I pull back the velvet rope on famous histories and the storytelling gears that keep them turning.